Hi, welcome to Agsolutely Fabulous. My name is Gillian Fennell, also known as Station Mum 101. I love everything about agriculture, especially the people and especially communicating about what makes Australian ag so special.
And I'm Katja Williams, a beef, cattle and cropping farmer, and I love all things ag, and I'm also known as the ultimate farm wife. Together, we are Agsolutely Fabulous, and we are talking all things agriculture beyond the headlines.
And we can't wait to give our opinion to you, and we hope you enjoy it.
So let's get into today's episode. Welcome to another episode of Agsolutely Fabulous. It's episode 73. Today we are talking about the hilarious ads that have been added to the start of our episode. Our comments on the fuel crisis, the fire ants are on the move, the crisis of living. We have had lots of questions about that, and especially in regards to the Royal Easter Show and much, much more. So let's jump into today's episode by starting off with Gillian. What have you been doing on the farm?
Well, we've just finished cattle work and just trucked some cattle out on the worst road. Not the worst road in South Australia, but it's pretty bad, given the fact that, rain was, a month ago at least, and they still haven't motivated themselves to come and fix it. But I have been, do I look youthful? If you're watching on the YouTube, I'll come up. Do I look nice and youthful and refreshed?
Close.
Because Amy sent me, I'm sure that says Amy's. This is Amy. I have a problem. If you're listening, I have a small problem. I am as blind as the arse of a goat when I put this stuff on my face at night because I've got my glasses off. Look at all the jars. It's incredible. So much stuff. And so for the past week, I've been rubbing the Repair and Restore eye cream, which I'm assuming is supposed to go just under my eyes, all over my whole face. But on the plus side, it does feel really nice. So I know that's probably technically not how it's supposed to be used. So that's the only feedback I have for you at this point in time is think about us old ladies who are, and those sight impaired people who do need glasses to read tiny things, and make your labels a little tiny bit bigger, or make a different font for the different sort of things, because then I will know more what that I'm putting on my face. But my favourite culture is I've got this clay mask, and look at that. It's a brush to put it on with, because how I like the accessories and the tiny things and stuff. So
Yeah.
haven't tried it yet because I haven't
What's
had a chance to sort of. It is. Again, can't read the label. It is a pink clay mask with calendula and aloe vera in it. And you'd love this. This would be right up. I think, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to open it. I'm just going to send it to you because this is just so far up your alley, it's not even funny. White clay, red iron oxide. I've got plenty of that in the dirt outside. Coconut milk powder, calendula flower extract, aloe vera leaf juice powder, chamomile flower extract, and lavender oil, all organic ingredients. So I'll set that aside. I'll send that off to you because I haven't opened that one yet. Everything else I've opened and sniffed. So
It does sound right up my alley.
yeah, I think I will pop that in the post for you when I remind myself to do it with some other little happy things for you, because it's pretty savage over there in New South Wales at the moment, because you are trucking cattle as well, but not for a happy reason.
No, we are destocking. One of the lessons we learnt in the last drought, which was 5 years in this area, is we decided we wouldn't feed as much stock as we did then. So unfortunately we are destocking. So that means the majority of our trade steers will go. It also means we are cutting down on the stud and commercial headcounts, which is really sad to see. One of our other key takeaways from the last drought was we will make smaller decisions more often. So that means that instead of feeling overwhelmed by the mobs that we're doing, especially when it's related to the studs and all our genetics, they are always big decisions. A lot of finance is tied up around that. So that's really hard. So we're making smaller decisions more often, but lots of trucks going out the gate with fuel and everything else we just can't keep feeding.
Yeah, it's never a good feeling when you have to sell. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners have been in that position before. We've been in that position before, and it's a great deal of empathy for you. Just fingers crossed that you get some good soaking winter rain, and then you can buy them all back in again. Maybe get something different than shorter ones this time. Maybe get some proper cattle.
I think I'd get in so much trouble if I bought something apart from shorties.
If I win the lotto, I'm going to send you a truckload of pure Brahman yaks from the Kimberley, big horns and everything. Just like unload that right there, and just the neighbours will be gobsmacked.
I'd have
rank
to film
Mickey bulls too,
faces.
so they can get out and cover all your stud shorthorn cows. That'd be perfect.
I can only imagine everyone else's faces, and that is hilarious. But I mean, we've been here before. We've been there again. I'll send some photos through to Gillian to share on the socials from the last drought. So I did take some comparisons from the end of 2019, which was the end of last drought in this area, and the beginning, I think it was April 2020, and the difference. So our land does respond quite quickly. We put a lot of work and conservation and energy into making sure that it does respond, that we don't eat out all our grass butts and wreck our seed banks and all of that. So I'll send those through so we can see those on the socials.
Yeah, I think it's also really good for our non-rural listeners to understand what it means to be in drought, but also still actively managing your land. Because often what you see on the TV is just bare paddocks that have just been destroyed, ruined through one reason or another. When we had our last really bad drought, the kangaroos did an incredible amount of damage, and we had zero impact or influence over what they do. So it's not always the farmer's, fault. But seeing how that, and also saying, oh, it looks like there's still feed in the paddock, but there's not, because cows can't eat that because it's too short for a start and it's not edible. And you need to leave it there to hold the soil together. So I think it's really good to share those sorts of things and give people the story behind it.
And I think another thing that a lot of people don't understand and know is that the kangaroos have like an enzyme in their saliva. So when they're actually eating the grass and the feed, it actually turns it off. And so your cattle, once it's been chewed on by roos, can't then be eaten or digested or enjoyed by the cattle. So they'll leave it alone. So they're not only eating the feed, but they're also turning the stuff that they're leaving behind off for livestock.
Yeah. But we won't get too far into that because we'll end up with death threats. So start talking too loudly about kangaroos and wild dogs and brings the crazies out.
They've been at us before. I have no doubt they'll come back again. But I did also want to say I was out at the Western property renovating in air quotes, fixing up the house to try and make it animal proof. So I have shared a reel of me stuffing like all this steel wool like into every gap that I possibly could. So I went through, I think it was like 6 massive bags of steel wool, just trying to seal up all the nooks and crannies in this house. And I have not seen the goanna, but there is definitely an echidna that lives under the house, and I've seen him a couple of times. And you know what? I didn't realise that echidnas growl.
Yes, they make and they squeak. They make all sorts of noises. But I was going to ask you about the goanna, and our listeners are probably wondering did you encounter the goanna? Because I was anticipating lots of fun and games when you started like shifting all the stuff around. But they're pretty sneaky. But I think, the echidna's harmless, obviously, and you sort of want him hanging around. The goanna, it depends on whether he decides to stay hidden or whether he decides to make a feature of himself, because they can be quite aggressive and intimidating if they feel like it.
Yeah.
You might have to take a holiday.
Yeah. I guess my tactic of turning up with 9 kids, 6 adults and 3 dogs kind of like might have made him feel very scarce.
Yeah. He's probably just curled up in a ball under the house somewhere, just waiting till everybody goes away again.
Absolutely. But let's jump into our first topic for tonight, which is the hilarious ad that is starting off some of our episodes. So thank you, AgFabs, who noticed this ad. I think the algorithm on our streaming platforms have picked up that we were talking about mining. And so they've attached a mining ad to the start of some of our episodes, and it's all about the rehabilitation of the land post and post mining and the nature corridors that they are putting in place, and that it's part of the importance of the planning process for the mines. I thought this was hilarious. Gillian?
This is what happens when you have all these automated systems, and this is the challenge. You're trying to pay your bills, because we do love what we do and that sort of stuff, but hosting and all that sort of stuff, we don't pay ourselves, but actually physically putting things on the internet and that sort of stuff, that all costs money. The RSS feed costs money, etc., etc. So then you get yourselves into a situation where you might inadvertently be promoting things that you might technically not agree with. And that is not to say that all mines are out there doing terrible things, but giving some of the discussions that we've had in the past about mining accessing farming land, and my constant dismay at the way that BHP and Santos are allowed to just rape and pillage the Great Artesian Basin in South Australia. I don't think we would be their first choice for being advertised on. So yeah, but the swings and roundabouts, you get a bit of balance, just ignore those ads, or even better, get onto the podcast host and say, not us, obviously, we'll make a report back to the people sticking the ads in there, but we don't enjoy that on our podcast, so we're not going to listen to that ad. Tell them that you skip it all the time, so they might give us something different.
Yeah, absolutely. So the fuel crisis, this has been going on for quite some time. Gillian, I'm going to let you start off on it.
So our mate in America woke up with just a fever dream and decided he's going to start a war in the Middle East. And you have this a lot, people go, oh, but it was terrible in Iran and they're killing people. Yes, it is terrible in Iran. And yes, they are killing their own people, etc., etc. But when you go into something like this without a plan and without the capacity to have alternative arrangements in place and to understand the nature of the people that you're engaging in these conflicts, you end up with the current situation of what we're in now, whereas there's a very, very small gap called the Strait of Hormuz, which I think it's 90% of the crude oil in the world moves through there. It might be 70%, I don't know. Now it's not open anymore, and that really sucks, because all the stuff that we need to run our island nation, like diesel and fertilizer, all those sorts of things, are on the other side of the strait. They can't get to where we are, because our biggest refineries are in Singapore, close Asian countries, those sorts of things. So yeah, it's a bit of a challenge, and it came at such a terrible time for croppers. They were trying to seed, trying to spray before seeding, and prices and I've heard some stories that people were just literally taking the piss. I was talking to a cotton grower from Queensland. She had a truck of diesel ordered. Fuel was in that truck. Price was locked in at something like $1.95 delivered on farm, something reasonable, normal prices. They'd had a bit of rain. She said, don't come out tonight, come first thing in the morning. Woke up to the news of old mate kicking off in the Middle East first thing in the morning. And the fuel company rang her and said, oh, that truckload of fuel is now going to be $3.50 delivered. And she said, what do you even mean? Because that fuel is it's not even in the country. It's on the truck, 30 kilometres away. It's not even far. What are you doing? So they've got themselves a report to the ACCC, and I hope that for all the government's big talkers, we're going to take this very seriously. I really do hope that some of these circumstances are dealt with harshly and appropriately, because that is outrageous. That is completely outrageous. And we are starting to see prices come back to the field now. Diesel was up around $3.50 in South Australia there for a while. It's now back to about $2.50. Still not great, especially if you want large volumes, because people are still struggling to get big volumes delivered. It's not great. What did you see happening in New South Wales, Katja? Did you get that bottlenecking of supply or anything?
Yeah, we definitely got some bottlenecking. The best thing about being near our biggest centre, which is Dubbo, is that you have lots of options and lots of different fuel companies. And so if someone had run out in, say, diesel, which is what I normally notice because that's what I use, then another fuel station had it. But when you get out to the smaller areas, particularly the smaller towns, they felt us the hardest because they might have only have one option. And some people were like, I can't even get to my nearest biggest centre to fuel up. So then they were stranded because they didn't have the kilometerage, because that's not where they usually fuel up. So they didn't even have the fuel to get there. And that's where it really impacted that. Definitely some idiots in this area stockpiling, which is incredibly frustrating. It's not even the people who need it for production and business. A lot of the local clubs and services have felt it really harshly. So the Beekeeping Society that I mentioned that I'm a part of, we have moved our meetings from monthly meetings to fortnightly meetings, because particularly in the apiary industry, like your margins of actually running a very sufficient, great business are really small. So all you need is that hike. And I mean, they've already been impacted by Varroa and everything else over the last couple of years. A fuel hike, it's just no good at all. So farmers are feeling it, remote people are feeling it, small country town clubs are feeling it, even a lot of the sporting competitions. Parents weren't able to take their kids to compete. They just didn't have the budget to be able to do that.
Yeah, we saw that in South Australia as well. School buses were impacted because in the more far-flung communities, especially on the west coast of South Australia, they couldn't get enough diesel for the school buses. The RFDS had to have a contingency plan in case it couldn't get enough avgas and Jet A1 for its fleet of emergency retrieval aircraft. It's not over. Like, the longer these shenanigans go on, the worse it's going to get and the longer it's going to last, because the last thing I've read most recently is that now, because we don't have enough bitumen to make a road or even repair a road, they're allowing road contractors and road builders to use European standard bitumen, which means come summer and about between 28 and 35 degrees, it's going to melt and run off the side of the road because it's not designed for Australian conditions. Things like anything to do with plastic, poly pipe prices are going to continue to climb and are going to be harder to get because they're all a byproduct of the fossil fuel industry and all the fossil fuels held up on the other side of the Strait of Hormuz. So, yeah, it's all that. If you use plastic, if you rely on plastic for anything, construction, kerosene, Jet A1, anything to do with fuel, like just because the prices have come down at the servo and there's a bit more availability does not mean that we can stop worrying and thinking about this, because it's the knock-on effects are going to be incredible. I don't think we've even seen the consequences of this yet. It's in 12 months' time, we'll be looking around going, oh my God, how did we arrive here at this point in time with no single-use plastics for things like surgical, stuff that all that sort of stuff. We're going to be really, really stuck because we're an island. We rely on people bringing stuff to our shores.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in combination of the fuel and fertilizer, whether you're pro, fertilizers and things like that being used on cropping, the impact is definitely going to be in 12 months' time, because between the fuel and the fert and the current drought circumstances in New South Wales and other states, it also means there's going to be a fodder shortage, not only for people, but also for livestock and other animals. So,
yep. And reduced yields. If you don't have the right fert at the right time, your yields are going to be down. So you're going to not make as much money, if you make any money at all. I think there'll be a lot of croppers who go backwards this season, and that's through no fault of their own. They did their budgets, they planned accordingly, and they woke up one morning and everything had doubled or tripled in price. They're the sorts of shocks and significant impacts to the industry that it doesn't matter how good of a planner you are as an individual, how much reserve you have, anything. That's the sort of thing that could wipe out any business overnight.
Yeah. Let's jump into our next topic.
Yeah, because that's pretty depressing, actually.
Well, I don't know if our next one is too much better because fire ants are on the move. So fire ants are one of the world's worst invasive species with the ability to severely impact our environment, our economy, our agricultural industries, health, and Australia's way of life. So if you are moving the define ants, so they are moving into parts of Queensland and New South Wales. There is a link which we'll put in our show notes, which shows the red, orange, and yellow areas on the map of what is being impacted. This footprint is increasing. Gillian, do you know much about fire ants?
I do know a little bit about them because they were just starting to become an issue just as I left Queensland, and that was 20 odd years ago. So someone really dropped the ball on this. They had the opportunity because do you know where they found them in large numbers was in an army base. So they could have gone literally nuclear on these things and not had a relatively small impact on the surrounding environment because, when you think about Air Force bases and army bases, those sorts of things, there's a lot of fuel and just, disturbing of everything. It's not a pristine, it's not a national park. It's a place of work. They could have really got stuck in there and really, got amongst them. But, there was sort of umming and ahhing and who no one wants to pay and states didn't want to pay and feds didn't want to pay and local councils have no money and then the Defence Force didn't want to pay and nobody has any money. Sad story. And now look where we are. Mm-hmm. And this is why biosecurity is so important. I think because we faced the circumstance last year in South Australia where we were desperate for fodder when we were right in the midst of the drought and people were making really risky decisions about bringing hay in from areas that could have potentially included fire ants. And so that was really challenging to manage because on one hand, people need to feed their stock, but on the other hand, you do not want to be that person who brings that pest into an area that doesn't have them because once they're enmeshed in an area, as they're discovering in Queensland, they're super, super hard to get rid of. Mm-hmm. They're really mobile. They make rafts of little ants and float down the river and just disperse everywhere. And they will literally kill you because they are it's not like one bite of one ant will kill you. It's the way they attack. They all mob you and sting you and bite you at once. And so they'll kill animals. They will kill people, small children, those sorts of things that especially if you're not a well person, really vulnerable. And pain. I haven't been bitten or stung by one, but apparently the pain is something else. Mm-hmm. So, let's not move plant and dirt from areas unless it is absolutely necessary and you go through all the checks and balances and so don't be carting pot plants. If someone says, I've got this pot plant for you and they live in the red zone, say, no, thank you. Keep the pot plant because you never know. You do not know what is in there. Could be eggs, could be a little tiny little colony just hiding in the roots. You get it home and next thing you know, overrun. So don't run the risk.
Absolutely. So the current red area runs from the Sunshine Coast out to Toowoomba and down to Tweed's Head. So it is definitely growing and there are some orange and yellow sites. Tweed's Head is one of the orange sites and Marulumba is a yellow site. Is that how you say it? Marulumba?
Yeah, Marulumba.
There's an R in it.
Yeah, but you don't say it.
Oh.
I can't see it because I'm guessing it's Mooloolaba because that's sort of in that area, but it might be. I'm just trying to think what's down there. It's been that long.
Marullumbah, Murullumbah.
Oh, Murrumbilla.
Oh, I was nowhere near the correct pronunciation for that one.
No, they're mad words. They're Indigenous words written down by people who don't know how to speak English, I think, and then we try to put them into the English language. It's mad, crazy.
Alrighty, with that spelling lesson and pronunciation lesson, let's move into.
And if I got it wrong, let me know because it's been a long time. Please send us a voice note. Send us a little clip of you pronouncing it correctly if you're from that region. We'll really appreciate that geography lesson.
Absolutely. So crisis of living. Masses people have questioned after the mass attendee of the Sydney Royal Easter Show, over 850 million visitors, featuring 13,000 animals, 400 breeds on display, and held at Sydney Olympic Park. If that many people are if that many people are able to attend the Royal Easter Show, is there really a crisis in living?
Oh, this is a hard one. Yeah, because if things are really shit, then it is nice to just have one day, like take your kids, do something nice.
Did I say 850 million?
You did. You said a lot.
I meant 850,000.
I don't think that was possible. Yeah, that's a better number. We'll keep that number. I was like, we'll pick that one up in a minute. But that's nearly 1 million people, and that's a lot of people. But you think about, like, because I do this with my kids when we go to shows and that sort of thing. You don't go on as many rides. You don't buy a show bag because they, one, are the most overpriced, worthless pieces of crap I've ever encountered. But two, they're not necessary. It's a nice outing. And instead of like participating in things like actually doing things and spending more money, you pay your ticket and you spend a nice day as a family walking around, looking, and so probably getting more engaged in the free exhibits and watching, like the craft displays and getting involved in the petting zoos and all that sort of stuff, the wood chopping, because they do put on entertainment in the centre ring and that sort of thing. And if you're like really struggling, it is nice to be able to have a family day out, have something nice to eat, or you could pack your own lunches and take your own water bottles. Like, you can still do these things on a budget. I think, it's a cost of living crisis, so people just must lock themselves in their homes and not do anything. Otherwise, they're just pretending to be poor. That's very unhelpful as well. So if I'm not acting poor enough for you, like...
I think about this, what this article and especially the title did not cover, is the fact that that number also includes your exhibitors. It also includes your judges and your stewards and people who are actually there for work, particularly if you are taking stud cattle. You're showing off your stud. You're showing off and competing against the other studs in your breed, and then you've got the all breed category. So that doesn't matter what animal you have, whether it's, show bulls like we take, or whether it's, you're in dairy or cropping or anything like that. You have your product on display at the Royal and it's been judged because, you've got your local shows, but then Sydney and Canberra for our area is the pinnacle. It'd be same as probably Adelaide for yours. The Adelaide show is what is the pinnacle for your state, and you're showing people what you are producing, not only to close that urban and rural link, but also because that's where your clients are going to come and meet you, because it is a big thing.
It's marketing. It's a marketing expense, because a blue ribbon, doesn't matter if you're making jams or breeding cattle or breeding horses or sheep or whatever you exhibit there, a blue ribbon, like for those cheese makers, for those wine makers, all those sorts of things, that means something. And it's a marketing exercise. So I think there's also that sort of disconnect about why you even, farmers are so poor, why are you going to the show? We've had this booked for 2 years, not even 12 months in advance. You have to plan at least 2 years in advance if you're going to go to do something, and book and organise everything in advance. B, it's already built into our marketing budget. It is essential part of what we do. We're going to go there and make sales. So we have to go there and meet suppliers or producers or whoever's going to buy our stuff. And C, if the exhibitors don't turn up, then what's even the point of the show? Yeah, the cost of living crisis thing, I think some people who don't experience the cost of living crisis get all bent out of shape when people say, look, life is really hard at the moment. And they're like, oh, well, why are you still going to the shops? I'm like, yeah, man, I still need to eat. Like, why are you still spending money? Because everything still costs money.
Yeah.
It's not like the 1920s depression where you could just sort of, you and your dog and your blanket could hit the road and just start walking around the countryside and pay no bills and just go and live in a ditch somewhere. We have responsibilities and jobs and children and families. You can't just pack up and go. And plus, no one would take you seriously if they saw you doing it this day and age. They'd probably report you to the cops anyway. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. No, I think there's articles like that, which is exactly why we started the podcast, and that is closing that divide and addressing the actual realities behind titles like this. Yes, there's crisis of living and it's a real thing, and people are really struggling. People are taking on extra jobs. They are really trying to live the most frugal life possible, even down to, growing their own food in their backyard or on their windowsill, or even like when I went down to Sydney the other day, I don't think I saw many verandas, like tiny little verandas in apartment shops that didn't have some sort of plants on it, where they were trying to do tomatoes or something else, or herbs. Like, people are really trying, because that's the cheaper option. And especially when we're talking about, maybe there being a lack of, food and fiber, over the next 12 months, 2 years, because of what we're feeling at the moment. I think that's really important. People are hurting, but you can't compare that to something that's actually designed around people's livelihoods.
Yeah, it is very disingenuous to say, oh, if you go to this event, then you obviously aren't experiencing cost of living crisis, because these things have been planned. It would cost so much more to cancel. It would just, and what would that do to the confidence of the economy and to the people? They'd be like, oh my God, we can't even have the show. Like, the show barely even stopped for World War I and II.
Yeah.
Like, people would be beside themselves, and that would only just make things worse. And you need to give people an outlet to have a nice day and have fun, and and you can't take that away from the people who are exhibiting either, because that's their one big window to one appearance at the show. How much does it cost to go to the Sydney Royal, Katja? Like 10 grand if you're exhibiting?
Cheap. It's not cheap.
Yeah, but you might meet 100 people who want to buy your bulls.
Mm-hmm.
And then it does become cheap. It becomes really cheap then. And so, it's a cost benefit analysis that each individual business has to make. But if that's stripped away, if they say, oh no, show's cancelled, well, you've already spent a lot of money in getting there in the first place. Like, you've already booked accommodation, you've already fattened the cattle, you've already done all that sort of stuff, and they go, oh no, we're going to cancel. Then you've lost a stack of money.
Yeah.
So that's why these things aren't cancelled, because, you just can't strip that away from people at a moment's notice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We had an AgFab question come through, which we will wrap up today's episode with. But if you have any other Q&As, if you have any other questions that you want to pop in, Gillian and I are all over socials. Add a question there or send it through to the email address. The email address is always in the show notes. Our next Q&A episode will be episode 76, so it's coming up really, really soon. The question is, what's the truth behind organic, free range, and pasture raised? I get so confused. I don't want to go down.
Are we talking about chickens essentially, or like, because the free range zucchinis, they are.
I'm assuming it's livestock.
Yeah, which is an interesting thing. It's marketing, essentially. They're different production systems. So when you're talking about chickens, free range, or like pigs or livestock, anything that, like an animal, free range means they're allowed to like go outside and they can do whatever. And we've talked about this before, that like sometimes outside's not the best place for an animal to live, because there's dangerous stuff out there, especially if you're a chicken. Like, you are so tasty, and the hawks are like so really good at killing things, and foxes and dogs and cats, and disease from wild birds. So if you're a chicken, outside's probably not the greatest place to live if you're a commercial chicken. It is, different things for different production systems. Free range livestock, that's just how they live. Don't get too bent out of shape about feedlots, because they know animal that is feedlotted spends a significant amount of time in a feedlot anyway. Imagine it's just like you've gone to a motel and you can't go outside, and you're just going to sit at the all-you-can-eat buffet. That is the feedlot equivalent for livestock. Everything is on tap. You get 24/7 medical care and attention and husbandry care and the tastiest diet you can possibly imagine. People are always looking at you, making sure you're safe and happy. And then you go and become a steak or a lamb chop. So that's, don't, but yeah. And pasture raised just means they eat grass. But that's a bit of a misnomer, because it's not as efficient to just, if you're like especially a pig or a chicken, it's not as efficient to just eat grass. So whatever's pasture raised is going to be older and tougher and not as heavy. So the farmers are going to make as much money. So you're going to pay a lot more money for what may be perceived as a inferior product. And there may be pasture-based systems out there that turn out magnificent things. But as Katja's just finished talking about, a lot of areas where these different farming systems happen are in the midst of a drought. So if they still say that, I'm from Dubbo and these are my pasture-raised pigs, that is bollocks, because there's no pasture out there for them to be eating at the moment. And also pigs are omnivores. They can't live just on pasture. So it's just different production systems. They live in different places. But yeah, eat what you want to eat at the price point you can afford. Everything in Australia meets very high standards. It doesn't matter what it says on the label. The food will be safe and it will be good for you. Just don't get too bent out of shape about what stickers and labels people slap on stuff.
I think if you are concerned about the labels and you are wanting to make the right choices for yourself, your family, and for Australian farming systems, if you are wanting to move away from big stores like Woolies and Coles and Aldi, which still have a lot of Australian products, then I think if you're wanting to deep dive into the nitty-gritty of this, meet a farmer. Go to the farmers markets. In major cities, you're not always talking to the farmer. Sometimes you're talking to the person they've employed to sell their product at those markets.
To stand at the market and be nice to people, because the farmer's got actual work to do.
Yes. But there are plenty of subscription box services which are popping up now. I can link a few in the show notes as well. If you are concerned about this and you want to know exactly how your food is raised, go to those farmers who are selling direct to consumer. Go to those farmers who are selling, because there's plenty out there. You've just got to do a little bit of research. And, a lot of them do birth through to butcher. And so they have that story and they will be able to give you all that detail. It'll be on their website. You can put in your subscription. They'll send a box to you every week or every month, however you want to do it. And that is the same across the board, whether we're talking pork, lamb, beef, eggs, fruit boxes, all those sorts of things. So plenty of services out there. If you want to know the exact farm that it came from and know that it's lifetime traceable, then those labels, those marketing labels don't matter, because you're getting the actual story of the production system.
Yep. And even your local butcher, if you're still lucky enough to have a family-owned butcher shop or a small independent butcher that you can access, a lot of them do source their bodies, animal bodies obviously, from smaller abattoirs where they do know where those things have come from, and they have people that they prefer to buy off because they have the better quality or the demand that their consumer wants, and you can get custom cuts and all those sorts of things. And for the love of God, do not go to Google and say, or ChatGPT, and do not go to any of that bullshit and goes and tappity tap and ask them about feedlot cattle and feedlots, because you will get animal activist nonsense. Yep. Your best bet, if you want accurate, truthful information, go to somewhere like Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, find a actual farmer and just say, hey, I want to buy, this sort of beef or this sort of lamb or these sorts of eggs, can you tell me how it works? Mm-hmm. Get their point of view, because they are going to be more honest with you, because some people are still going to feed you a line of bullshit because it's in their best interest, because they're trying to sell you something. But an average everyday farmer will just say, yes, we do this and this is what we do and these are the systems and these are all the things we have to fill out and these are the regulations we have to adhere to and this is how we make sure it's safe and clean and healthy, blah, blah, blah. Whereas you will not get that factual information from an activist organisation because they will tell you absolute lies.
Mm-hmm.
So do not ask Google or ChatGPT or any of those other generative things any information about agricultural farming because their search results always put the activists up first. Go and find a real producer somewhere and ask them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Love your questions. Love that you're sending in articles. Please keep sending them through. We love sharing them. We love talking about them and giving our opinion on closing that urban rural divide and agriculture beyond the headlines. If you've enjoyed this episode or you know someone who will, make sure you're sending it to them, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on Absolutely Fabulous. If you've been listening along and enjoying all this content, which I assume you have, you've gotten this far, then you might also like Katja's other podcast. It's the Ultimate Farm Wife Podcast. And I'm going to play the intro for you right now. Welcome to the Ultimate Farm Wife Podcast. On this channel, we're going to be discussing all things marrying a farmer, moving to the land, and becoming integrated with a family farming operation. Whether you're moving to the farm for the first time or whether you're moving back into a family farming operation, we discuss the ins and the outs of all of it. So let's jump into today's episode.